Aufhalten. Aufhalten. Wie sagt man? Aufhalten?
J'ai arrêté, je recommence.
Comment on dit arrêter? Aufhalten?
Stoppen. Stoppen.
Mais on peut pas dire aufhalten?
Non, organiser un train ou une voiture. Ou comment on prend un train ou quelque chose. Folie, ça peut. Enfin, une personne.
Ah! I can't believe it.
It's going to snow today.
I can't believe it.
It's
It's going to hail today. Hail.
Hell, Gehenna.
Hail.
Rastan.
It's going to hail today.
It's going to hail today. Echt favorite hail?
Do you hear for the thunder? Listen, do you hear the thunder?
No, it's a fan.
No, I hear the thunder. Mashiach is going to come.
Don't embarrass me, please.
Ensemble.
I don't embarrass you, because the fact that you are not here in my shiur doesn't mean that you don't study. You may study in another place. You understand?
Yeah.
But today, really, that's the shiur you should listen to, you especially. It's incredible. It's a providence that you
What have you got up your sleeve? What have you got up your sleeve today?
Up my sleeve? Why I don't roll up my sleeve?
No. What have you got
Ah,
up your sleeve today? It
means
means
what are you preparing for us?
what up your sleeve means. How are you going to surprise us today?
Today, okay, we begin? Because...
C'est tout enregistré déjà.
Ah bon, ça a déjà commencé?
You don't always like the fan. You like the fan?
Not so much.
So I put it to me. Me and Rav.
Okay, we begin,
Papa
because
Roy.
anyway, it's not good, you know, when people come late, it's not good to wait for them, because they get accustomed to come later and later.
Or we can ring the bell.
Okay, today I'm going to answer a question which is very often in the head of people who begin in Torah. On one side, yes, we have to trust in God, that God is providing. On the other side, it's written, Al tismoch al hanes. You shouldn't rely on miracles. So on one side, Chazal told us not to rely on miracles and to behave in the darkei hateva, that means in the ways of nature. On the other side, it's written, Betach b'Hashem, trust in God. So, how can we make a bridge between the two ideas? Yes, how is it possible to conciliate the two, to reconcile the two ideas? This is the purpose of the shiur of today. First of all, I want to say something concerning the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov asked the question, what's the difference between a miracle and nature? And he said there is no difference, because when you see the natural closely, yes, it's a miracle in itself. But just the difference is that since it's a miracle which happens at every second, yes, since it's a miracle which happens at every second, that's the reason why we don't see it as a miracle anymore, and we call it natural. Yes. For instance, you know there is a theory by Darwin, the theory of evolution, which says that it's not so much a miracle, it's just that there was an evolution of the things little by little and make millions of years. Yes? At the beginning there was just the beginning of a cell, and it was not so much, and not everything was fit to the environment. And then the fittest structure could survive and could get more and more adapted to the environment and transmit this new adaptation to the next generation and so on. So it's a very long way of progressive adaptation to the environment. And what we see today is the result of millions and millions of years of progressive adaptation. Yes? There are several things that we can answer to this. When I spoke to Rav Levi, Professor Levi, who was here, told me there are several answers. The first answer is that, for instance, the bird, they explain in the Darwin, the bird a bird.
Support.
They explain, yes, in the theory of Darwin, at the beginning it has just an arm, yes, and it was not adapted, so little by little, millions of years, there was something which was woven, so to say, between the arm and the trunk. And this is the wing. But he says, if it was not adapted, how can you explain that it survived during millions of years without the adaptation? Because it took millions of years to make the wing by itself. This is the first question. Second question, he says, we didn't find any remnants, any fossils of the medium stages. If the medium stages, yes, existed, why don't we find any remnants? There is a third and very good argument which is given by Bergson. Bergson is the French philosopher who said like this. He took the example of the eye. In order to see, you need a lot of things. You need something, and I need you for English. How do you call in English la pupille?
The pupil.
Oh, you need the pupil. It's like, I was explained by a doctor, an ophthalmologist, that an eye is like a camera. Exactly like a camera, but a super camera. You need the pupil, yes, it's like a pupil in a school. Yeah? You need the pupil in order to make a dosage, yes, which quantity of light you are going to receive. If there is too much light, so the image is completely drowned. It's vague. But if there is not enough light, it becomes very dim, very dark. So it's a dosage. This is the first part that I want to explain in the eye. The second part is, in French, rétine.
Retina.
Retina. So, you see, it's not by chance he's here, this guy. So, the retina, yes, is as thin as a post stamp. That means not even half a millimeter. Yes, and you have 120 millions of cells in the retina. And on the retina, the image is reverse. It's not in the proper sense. It's reverse. And then there is a nerve, the optical nerve, yes, which leads the image from the retina up to the brain.
More pronouncement on that E. Retina.
Retina. From the retina up to the eye, thank you, up to the brain.
What is the retina?
La retina, la rétine de l'œil. C'est au fond de l'œil, quelque chose qui permet de voir.
Netzhaut.
Yes. And from the retina up to the brain there is a kind of channel, a nerve, which is called optical nerve. And the brain itself is a computer so sophisticated. We could never imitate such a computer. So he said like this, suppose it's a very slow evolution. It's not possible. Why? Because all the things have to be present at the same moment in order to see. If one thing is missing, you cannot see. Without the brain, you cannot see. Without this nerve, you cannot see. Without retina, you cannot see. So everything has to be present at the same moment. So suppose you tell me, okay, all the elements made an evolution on their own, and then they met. But you need for this a conductor, like an orchestra. In an orchestra, you have the, how do you say,
Conductor.
the conductor, chef d'orchestre. So you need a conductor. Why? Because the conductor has to say, you retina, you have to make an evolution in this sense, and you pupil in this sense, and you brain in this sense, and you the optical nerve in this sense. That means all they have to make parallel evolutions to come to the same point. That means you need a conductor. So who is the conductor? It's God. It cannot be by itself. So Baal Shem Tov says, what's the difference between Nes and Teva, between miracle and nature? Nature is in itself a miracle, but since we are too much accustomed to this miracle, because it happens at every second, we give it another name, we call it nature.
With a capital N.
What?
With a capital N.
Yeah, of course. With a capital N. That's fine, thank you. So now No, the thing is like this. Till Megillat Esther, God was obvious. God was revealed. And it's very interesting because Megillat Esther is the 5th century before, 5th century BC. Yeah? And in Greece, it's the passage from pre-Socrates up to Socrates. And Socrates is reason, logics, philosophy, the beginning of philosophy. And in the book of Esther, God is acting not with miracles, like in Passover, like in Shavuot. In Shavuot, God put the mountain on the heads of our ancestors like the lid of a pot. Yeah? Sukkot, all these festivals, they are remembrances of miracles, open miracles. But Purim, it's not. Everything was according to nature. But there are so many coincidences that you see God's hand. But it's not an obvious miracle. It's a hidden miracle. That's the reason why it's called Esther. Esther means hidden. That means it's the beginning of a new era. It's not an era of open miracles, but hidden miracles. That God is acting like today in our lives, but it's not an obvious miracle. Just some coincidences, yes, that it's too much, and you see that there is God's hand. And what is very interesting, in the book of Esther, when the Jews had a very big threat upon their heads to be completely exterminated, to be... I have also to learn something. I learn English and you learn Torah. When the Jews had a threat to be completely exterminated by Haman, so Mordechai went to Esther, his niece, and Esther was married with the king, with Ahasuerus. So he said to the king, he said to the queen, to Esther, who was Jewish, please intervene to the king, in order to avoid such a catastrophe, that all the Jews should not be exterminated. So we would have expected that the queen would go straight away to the king. No, she said, I will go in 3 days. Why? Because during 3 days, all the Jews of the kingdom have to make a fast. Why? And especially, the question is asked, when a woman has fasted, she is ugly. She is not so attractive because she is very tired. After 3 days of fasting, she is not going to be attractive to her husband, and she needs to be attractive. Why? Because if she goes to her husband, to the king, without receiving a previous convocation, yes, she can be put to death, unless he gives the stick. No, he gives the stick, the sceptre of the king. That means that he accepts to receive this person. It's called in Hebrew sharvit. Yeah? Don't know. The scepter.
Signal, it's a
scepter. No? Okay.
Here's a
so
signal.
how did she take such a risk? Not to go at once and to fast 3 days and to be less attractive and so on. Yes? The answer is like this. And this is for every one of us here that I'm going to say. Esther knew that there is nothing by chance. That God, yes, is drawing the threads behind the scenes. It's like puppets. When you see puppets, yeah, there is someone who is drawing the threads of the puppets. They are not moving by themselves. And the same, you know what is puppet?
Say in French.
P-U-P-P-E-T.
Puppets.
Puppets. When you see puppets, you know there is someone who is moving the threads. It's not going by itself. So she said to herself, nothing is by chance. If we have such a threat, it means there is a reason, a spiritual reason. And before removing the threat in itself, the physical threat, I have to remove the spiritual root to eradicate the spiritual reason of the threat. And she thought, why did this happen to us? And she thought, because the Jews, yes, went to the invitation of the king at the beginning of the Megillah. They were invited to a feast, yes? And they went there, and they thought that, no, we are close to the king, we don't need God anymore, so to say. They weren't relying anymore on the divine providence, but only on the king, because we are friends of the king. And they ate kosher at the feast. It was not the sin that they committed, chas v'shalom. They did not eat non-kosher. But our sages say the sin was, they thought everything is okay, we are the friends of the king. They forgot that he is. Sometimes we are like puppets. Yes, you say puppets, yeah? Okay? So she said, first, we have to repair the spiritual cause, the sin that we did. Everybody should fast 3 days. And then she went and she knew that she will get. From this we understand one thing. Indeed, it's written, Al tismoch al nes. We have to do ishtadlut. We have to make efforts in order to earn our livelihood, But in the same way, we know that everything is decided by God, and so everything is according to our merit. When you need something, you have to do something, you have to make an effort, not rely on the miracle. But in the same way, you have to improve your life, to improve your being, because everything depends on this. And we say on this like this: we have to make efforts, but the efforts that we make in order to earn our livelihood, yes, they are just garments to conceal divine intervention, divine providence. Because the providence of God shouldn't be completely naked and obvious. Because we are not on the level to see such a divine providence. So we have to conceal it. It's like garments to conceal the body. But on this it's written in the Midrash, Amarbe b'malbushim shote. If someone multiplies, increases the number of garments, he is mad. Suppose someone comes with 2 ties, with 2 kippot on his head. You would say he is cuckoo. There is something wrong with him. Yes? Or 2 glasses, 2 pairs of glasses. So the same thing in spiritual realm. We have to conceal, like garments, we have to conceal divine intervention. Yeah? Intervention. But if we conceal it too much, that means that we do too much. We are crazy people because we don't rely on divine providence. We rely only on our efforts. And this is craziness. This is madness. Yeah? For instance, a guy will tell you, in the Torah, I'm supposed to work. I cannot be like a big tzaddik, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who relies on miracles. Because the way to rely on miracles is only for big tzaddikim. So since I have to work, I will work 7 days a week. This is craziness, because he doesn't rely on God. He thinks that everything comes from him, and it's not true. And I want to tell you 2 stories, yes, to, illustrate. Yeah? To illustrate. English teacher.
Illustrate,
yeah. To illustrate what I said. The first story is concerning my father. My father had a heart disease. Yes? And one day I went to see him. He was in holiday with my mother on the Côte d'Azur. It's the French Riviera. Yeah? And he was there in his hotel. He was lying in bed with a lot of pains here in his chest. And my friends who are doctors there told me it's because of his heart and we have to put him to hospital because, you cannot know. So the doctors gave him 4 medicines, one after the other, during 5 months. July up to December. And in December, still he had the same problem. So I was in New York in December for Hanukkah, and I got into the office of the Lubavitcher Rebbe with a French group, and we couldn't speak to the Rebbe, but we could give a letter to him. So I gave a letter, and in the letter I was explaining the problem with my father. It was exactly Thursday, December 17. I repeat, it's important, Thursday, December 17. Thursday, December 24. That means 1 week after, the Rebbe is sending a letter by the way of post, yeah, to me in France, and the letter arrived only on April 1st. And in the letter he was saying that I received your letter and I'm going to pray for this on the grave of the previous Rebbe. That means his father-in-law. So December 24, he tells me that he's going to pray for this. January 2nd, that means 1 week after, the doctor of my father told him, listen, we tried 4 medicines. There is a new one, we are going to try it, it's a 5th one. He prescribed the 5th one, and in 24 hours all the pain stopped. And I spoke of it, of someone who is a professor of cardiology, a friend of mine in Strasbourg. And he told me what is wonderful in this story is the fact that all these medicines, you cannot say that this is better than this. They all are more or less the same. So why 4 medicines during 6 months, they didn't work, and the 5th one worked? So I knew why. Because there was the prayer of the tzaddik. But nevertheless, it had to be concealed by a medicine. If my father had stopped all the medicine and suddenly all the pains would have stopped, it would be an obvious miracle. And we are not allowed to rely on an obvious miracle. So he had to take a medicine. But you see obviously why this medicine is working and the 4 previous ones didn't work. So this is divine providence. And you see it. I want to tell you another story. In my hometown, Grenoble.
Before you tell that, I just want to tell you that I need to go make an effort to support myself in a few minutes. So please don't take offense. It's nothing you said.
No, I don't take offense at all. But I am sad that my English teacher and supporter won't be here.
Matajao's English is very good and he'll take
Matajao is Dutch. I want someone whose mother tongue is English.
I'll call Dan.
Okay, listen. I want to go on a second story. The second story is like this. In my hometown in Grenoble, there was a guy from Tunisia, and he made Teshuva very late, at the age of 50. Yes, 50. And his profession, he was selling glasses, optician.
Optometrist.
Optometrist.
Optician is more like a doctor. Optician, optometrist.
Yes.
Similar, I'm not sure which is right. I think optician. Optician
Today I learned retina, optometrist, exterminated. You see, you are obliged to stay here. Okay. So
I'd like to get the end of the story if it's less than 5 minutes.
Yes, of course. I just finished the story and then you will speak.
Yeah, okay.
So this man, he told me like this. He told me, listen, I made Teshuva this year. So this year in September, yes, I closed for all the Shabbos and the festivals. And he told me, and September for us, the optometrist, is the best month in the year because people go back to school and so they buy new glasses. Yeah? And I was closed the 4 Shabbatot, Rosh Hashanah, 2 days, Yom Kippur, 1 day, the 2 days of Sukkot and the 2 days of Simchat Torah, 11 days. Oh, he told me, my wife tells me, sell the shop. Why do you keep this shop? Sell it. So he told me, believe me, I made more money than last year that I was all the time open. And since there is a very big crisis at the time, all the people ask me, how do you do? How do you have clients? We don't have clients anymore. How do you do? And I say, I don't know. Listen. Listen the end of this story. One day, I went to Paris for the first time in a very big synagogue. It was on Shabbos. And the people told me, listen, the rabbi at the synagogue has got the flu, so he cannot give the lecture. Please, would you give the lecture instead of him? So I said, okay. And I spoke of providence, miracles, human efforts, and I said this story concerning the optometrist. At the end of the lecture, someone is standing on his feet and he comes to me like a bird on its prey. You know what is like a bird, like an eagle on its prey? P-R-E-Y.
A vulture.
Yeah, a vulture.
Vulture.
A vautour, vulture.
Yeah, but also eagle.
Yeah?
Vulture, correct.
Yes, and he doesn't tell me Shabbat Shalom, nothing. He just tells me, listen, you are a messenger of God. Like this, vous êtes un messager du ciel, messenger of heaven. So I asked him, why? He told me, listen, I am optometrist. And yesterday, namely Friday, I had an appointment, a business interview, yes, for a position as an optometrist, but I was hesitating because I will have to work on Shabbos. So I called them and I asked to put off the appointment up to Wednesday because I wanted to think it over in the meantime. And today, Shabbat, I come to the synagogue and I hear this story with the optometrist. I understand that this story is destined to me, so I won't take this job. So you see God's hand. So I say to the guy in Grenoble, your story made a new Shomer Shabbat. Because I said your story and this is the result. Now we are going to listen to the story of Doron.
My story is I have to make shishtalut to support myself, and I'm afraid
Efforts.
I have to make efforts to support myself, and therefore I'd love to hear the end of your shiur, but I'm not my own boss and I have to report in 10 minutes. So thank you, and hopefully I'll hear your shiur tomorrow.
Okay. God bless you.
God bless you. Goodbye means God bless you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Now, goodbye and also good sell. Goodbye and also good sell.
Amen.
The Jewish way of thinking. I like this. Goodbye.
Okay.
Amen.
Now, why is it so? Why do we have to limit our efforts in Parnassa, in livelihood, in everything, in order to learn more Torah, in order to pray and so on? Listen well. Because how God's existence can appear in our eyes only by paradoxes. Why do I mean paradoxes? When the things are normal, you don't see God's existence. For instance, the Chinese people, they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when they become rich, you don't see God's hand. You say, of course, they work all the time. So they became rich because they are working all the time. You don't see God's hands. But when someone tells you, I don't work on Shabbat, and I work just half time because I want to learn Torah, and nevertheless he becomes rich, you see God's providence. Because it's a paradox that he's becoming rich. Same thing, not only with time, but you have also to make paradoxes. Yes, you know what is a paradox? With money. Because when you give the tithe, 10% of your money, and you say, whatever I give 10%, so what is out. You are more poor than before. You're not richer because you lost money, so to say. It's no more in your pocket. Nevertheless, at the end, you become richer because there is a promise of God that if you give, you become richer. This is a paradox, and this shows God's existence. You understand? So, how can we make God's existence appear in our eyes in a very clear way? By creating paradoxes. There is the paradox of the time. I take time to learn Torah. I take time to teach people Torah. And during this time I could work, I could make a good amount of money. No. And there is the paradox of tzedakah, charity. I give my money. With this money I could buy so many things. I could go to the restaurant, I could do this, I could do this, but nevertheless I give it. So, normally when you work less and when you give more money, you should be more poor. At the end you see that you end richer. From this paradox, you see God's existence. Do you understand? David, I'm listening to you. You have something to tell me, I feel it.
No, it's true. I understand. You said the paradox shows the providence of Hashem, right?
Yes.
Because normally, if you give, normally you should become Chas v'Shalom poor. But there's a promise that the one who gives will be actually riches.
Der Paradox ist gemacht, zeigen die Existenz von Gott. Ohne Paradox, du kannst nicht sehen, es ist alles normal. Aber wenn es ist nicht normal, ja, wenn es ist etwas Besonderes, du bist nicht Arme, du bist Reiche, das zeigt die Existenz von Gott. Verstehst?
Tu n'es pas tout seul.
Oui?
C'est quoi la preuve exactement?
Der Beweis ist, dass ich habe gegeben. Wenn ich gebe, ich habe weniger. Und jetzt ich habe gegeben und ich habe mehr. Also das zeigt, das ist zu zeigen, ja, die Existenz von Gott. Jo. Excuse me if I spoke in German, yeah? You understood?
Yes.
Oh, Baruch Hashem. I want to learn German with him.
Yeah.
Because I will have to teach Torah in German. So he is training me.
Very good.
Okay? And afterwards I will have to learn Dutch. Okay. Now, when you take the word which means time in Hebrew, Zman. Zman, you have two parts. Zman, Zeman. It's a notaricon. That means two words. Zman, Zeman. Zman, it is man, like the man from heaven. Why? Listen well. When the people receive the man in the desert, they just receive for one day. Devar yom beyomo. The part of the day for the day. But they couldn't save it for tomorrow. If they tried to save it for tomorrow, worms would come. So the Gemara is asking, why is it so? Why God didn't give the man for 30 days? And the Gemara is answering, because someone who has food for 30 days, he doesn't break his heart toward God. He's not relying on God, because he has. So he's self-confident. Yes? And indeed, the time is like the man. Zman, Zeman. Why? Because the man, it was every day you had to put your eyes up to heaven to see if the man is getting down. Every day you have to rely on God. Same thing with your time. Every day you have time. And you have to use it at the best of your abilities, not to waste the time. And if you use it as you should use it, tomorrow you will have more time. And the day after tomorrow you will have more time. But if you waste the time, you won't have tomorrow. So you have to take care of today. That's the reason why it's written, Ayom im bekolo tishma'u. Today, if you listen to his voice. And there is a famous Ma'amar article on this by Rabbi Nachman Bresla in Nikute Moharan. He says, Ayom, today, if you listen to his voice. What does it mean today, if you listen to his voice? We sing it Shabbos, Friday night, It's in the Psalms. Ayom im bekolot ishma'u. Today, if you listen to his voice. Rabbi Nachman says, it's in Lechu Neranena. Yes, Rabbi Nachman explains like this. What does it mean today if you listen to his voice? That when a man gets up in the morning, suddenly he has an impression that he has to heave up mountains. Yes, to raise mountains. There are so many things to do. Yes, and I have to earn my livelihood, and I have to care for this, and I have to care for this, and I have to care for this. He says, listen, you get up in the morning, just think of today. If today you behave as you should behave, you can rely on God's help for tomorrow. And if 2 days you can behave as you should behave and make a good Teshuva, you can rely on God's help for the next day and so on. So the only thing that you have to care for is the day of today. And God will provide for the other things. And when I read this, I remembered there was a very good Dvar Torah by Rav Ringer in Nice, Zichrono Livracha. He said like this: a man cannot solve all the problems in the same time. It's impossible for a man to solve all the problems. So we have to solve the main problem. What is the main problem of our existence? Is our relationship to God, to the divine source. And if we solve this problem, we have a good relationship with God because we behave as we should behave at the best of our abilities, He will provide for the other things. You cannot solve all the problems at the same time. And this is what Esther did when there was a threat on the Jewish people. The Jewish people were threatened to be exterminated by Iran at that time. It was exactly Iran. Yeah. So she said, if this is going to happen, it's because we behaved badly. And she understood what was the bad behavior which put the Jewish people to such a threat. So before doing anything, before going to the king in order to beseech the king to do something and to erase this decree, she said, I'm going to fast 3 days, and I'm asking from all the Jews of the kingdom to fast 3 days. Because this problem, first we have to solve the real spiritual cause of the problem. Before erasing, before cancelling the physical problem, we have to repair the spiritual problem which is at the root of this. And she understood that the Jews didn't behave well at the beginning of the Megillah when they were invited by the king to the feast and so on. So she said, first of all, we have to cope with the spiritual reason of it. And if we can repair in the spiritual field, so we can rely on God's help. This is it. No. Very often people ask us, what is the dosage, yes, between human efforts and relying on God? On one side, we can rely on God's providence and God's help. On the other side, it's written, don't rely on miracles. The thing is like this. If you work less in order to learn Torah, in order to get busy with holy things, you want also to help the people and this and this and this, normally you can rely on God's help. Because you can say to God, I'm not a lazy person. If I work less, it's not just to go to the beach, but it's to go to the Beis HaMikdash and to learn and so on, so please help me. Yes, but nevertheless, you have to be careful that you have to do something and don't rely too much on God's help, in the meaning that you have to do a minimum. You cannot do less than the minimum and then to say God will provide, because we are not at such a level. We are not tzaddikim. Yes? This was the way of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He could rely completely on God. But we don't have such a madrega, such a degree, such a level. Yeah? So that's the reason why we have to do according to our level. So it's a very individual dosage. Which part is on myself and which part I leave to God. You understand? Yes? It's okay? So today we are going to see, in the end of the shiur, the machloket, the discussion between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael. Please. Okay, so the Gemara is in the short lines. In the short lines, the penultimate of the short lines. The penultimate of the short lines. You have it?
Yes, penultimate.
Avant-dernière.
Penultimate.
When you stress the first syllable, penultimate. Yeah? Yes?
I know it's correct. How do you say penultimate?
How do you pronounce it? Penultimate?
I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
It's the one before the last one.
Penultimate. This is a
Penultimate.
French translation of a word which probably doesn't exist.
It's a Latin word. Yeah, but it's English.
Penultimatus.
ואספת לגניך, תנו רבנן, ואספת לגניך. You have it? The
Yes,
line before the last one in the short lines. ואספת לגניך. You will gather your corn. מה תלמוד לומר? What's the meaning of the verse? לפי שנאמר, because it's said in another place, לא ימוש ספר התורה הזה מפיך. This Sefer Torah, this book of Torah, won't move from your mouth. Yachol, could we understand Dvarim Kiktavam? Could we understand this in a literal meaning that we shouldn't move from the Sefer, we shouldn't move from the book of Torah? Talmud Lomar, therefore, there is another verse which tells you, will gather your corn. You will have to roll up your sleeves and to gather your corn. You cannot be all the time in the book of Torah. You have to behave yourself the normal behavior of the earth. That means you have to work. Divrei Rabbi Ishmael. This is Rabbi Ishmael who thinks that you have to share your time between the learning of the Torah, the Sefer, and the work. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai has a different opinion. Efshar Adam, could we understand that a man, Choresh Bishat Charisha, will plow by the time of plowing, Vezorea Bishat Zeria, and he will sow by the time of sowing, Vekotzer, and he will harvest Bishat Ketzira by the time of harvest, by the time of the crop, Vedash Bishat Disha, Vezore Bishat Aruah, and so on. Torah, materialia. If a man works so much, what will be the Torah? There won't be any Torah anymore. Ela bizman Israel osim retzono shel makom. At the moment that the Jews, yes, accomplish God's will, melachtan naaset al yedei acherim. Their jobs, their work is done by other people. Sheneemar, so they could learn the Torah because there are some others who care for the job. Ve'amdu zarim ur'u tzomchem. And strangers will come and they will take your cattle to grass. Ubizman she'en Israel osim retzono shel makom. But when the Jews don't accomplish God's will, melachtan naaset al yedei atzman. Their jobs is done by themselves, and so they cannot learn the Torah. And in this place it's written, sheneemar v'asafta leganecha. You will gather your corn. You will gather your corn. It means that you don't have the blessing to see your job done by others. Velo od, and not only this, when they are really they don't deserve. Even the job of other people is done by themselves. They have to do the job of other people. Sheneemar v'avatta et oivecha. You will serve your enemies. Amar Abaye, that's the conclusion of the Gemara. Arbe asu ke Rabbi Ishmael. Many people did like Rabbi Ishmael, that they went to work. Many people did like Rabbi Ishmael, they went to work. Ve'alta bayadan, and they succeeded. Ke Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and many people did like Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, ve'lo alta bayadam, and they didn't succeed. I repeat the conclusion. Many people did like Rabbi Ishmael. It means that they went to work and they succeeded in life. But many people wanted to do like Rabbi Shimon, to stay away from the work and just to study, and they didn't succeed. Okay, so the question is, does it mean that the way of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is not a good way? You cannot stay away from working, you cannot stay in studying. The answer is, it's a good way. But here, it's written, Arbe asu. Arbe means many. Why they didn't succeed? Because the way of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is not the way of the many. It's the way of the happy few. The happy few, they can afford living without working, and they are blessed, and they can learn the Torah the whole day. This is what happened to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He was concealing himself with his son during 12 years in a cave and so on, and was learning days and nights. Yes, but this is for the happy few. That's the reason why for the many, for the crowd, yeah, it's written, Arbe asu ki Rabbi Ishmael ve'alta biyadam. Many did like Rabbi Ishmael, and they succeeded, because this is the way of the many. Yes, and the way of the happy few is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. What do we learn from here? That you cannot too much rely on God's help. You have to do something, you have to roll up your sleeves, you have to conceal God's intervention. And indeed, I say the miracle which happened with my father concerning the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which was, so to say, a hidden miracle, but nevertheless an obvious miracle. Yes? You listen to me. Yes? What's your name? Your name? Matatiao. Your head is not in Holland, yeah? Okay. Okay, Matatiao, listen well. In my city, in Grenoble, there was a guy who had an ulcer. An ulcer is a very... Ulcer. 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 Ulkus in Hebrew. You know what is an ulcer?
Yeah.
It's a disease of the stomach.
Yes, sure.
Yes, and the skin, the inner skin of the stomach, yes, is worn out. So it's very painful, and especially all the time he was drinking alcohol, he was eating spicy, it was terrible. And he was taking medicine, but at that time it was not. Today we know how to deal with this, because we know that there is a microbe, so we give antibiotics, and that's it. But at that time they didn't know, they didn't discover this. So they were giving something against the acids of the stomachs. But it was very painful, especially when he was drinking alcohol or he was eating spicy, it was unbearable. And one day he came to Israel on holiday, and he went to see Baba Saleh, very big saint. And he had no intention to speak of his ulcer, so he said to Baba Saleh, I would like a blessing from you. So Baba Saleh told him, a blessing, you don't have children? He said, no, I have children. So Baba Saleh told him, but why do you want a blessing? You have something wrong, you are ill. So this gave him the idea to speak of his ulcer that he didn't want to mention at the beginning. So Baba Saleh heard they had an ulcer, and he said to his servant to pour a full cup, full to the brim, of machia. Machia is a very strong beverage, yeah, very strong. And this man said to Baba Saleh, Chacham, if I drink this, I go straight to the cemetery. Baba Saleh told him, no, you drink. And he took it to his lips. And for the first time, little by little, he saw that the alcohol was not damaging, was not harming, was not causing pains. And then Baba Saleh gave him some little cookies to eat, and after the cookies, a second cup full to the brim. And from that time, he didn't take any medicine anymore, and he was eating everything. And I said the story when I was in Grenoble, because this man made Aliyah to Ashdod, so I said the story at the Kiddush in Shabbos morning, I said the story, and there was by my side a doctor, and the doctor waited for me to finish the story, and he took me apart and he told me, you know, this man you spoke of, he was my patient. And I can tell you that 20 years after what you said, I pushed him to go and to be x-rayed again, and there was absolutely no trace of his ulcer. So this is an obvious miracle. That means that in our generations, we had still people who were able to make obvious miracles. But why? Because this strengthens the people in their emunah, in their faith. You know, the Chazon Ish says that there was a time, according to the Torah, we had to hate the people who didn't fulfill the Torah, to hate them. But he says, it was a time there were miracles and tzaddikim, so God's presence was obvious. So people had absolutely no excuse not to fulfill the Torah. But today we don't have miracles, he says. We don't have tzaddikim. So the truth is concealed. So we cannot hate the people who don't fulfill the Torah. The only way we have is to attract them by chains of love. Be'avotot shel ahava. These are the words of the Chazon Ish. In other words, it tells us that obvious miracles strengthens our faith. And I think this is the reason why there was still in our time open miracles, because we needed this in order to strengthen our faith in such a dim, such a dark period, such a dark time as the time that we are crossing over. Okay, so what do I want to say? That in paradoxes you see God's presence. I want to finish the paradox of the time, the paradox of the money. You give money, normally you are more poor because what you gave, you gave. You end up more richer. You give your time for the limud of Torah, to teach Torah, so you have less time. You will have more, because God will do in such a way that you need to learn, to work more, to work less. And indeed, I want to finish by a story. A taxi driver here in Jerusalem told me once, he saw me with a kippah, he didn't have a kippah. So he saw one religious, and suddenly he turned to me, and the first words he told me, you know, in my position, in my job, I feel God, I see God. I told him, why? He told me, because you know, Sundays, I'm not doing anything, I don't have any client. Yes? So I'm worrying, I'm saying to myself, how am I going to pay the mashkanta? The mortgage. How am I going to pay the mortgage? And suddenly at the end of the day, someone is coming and tells me, please, take me to the airport. And in one shot, I'm covering the whole day. So he told me, you see, in my profession, I see God. So I told him, what you tell me is written in the Gemara. The Gemara is asking why the man was falling every day from heaven, and they couldn't save for tomorrow. Every day they had to be like this and to expect the coming of the man, because God wanted them to feel God's presence. And the Gemara says, when you have something to eat for 1 month, you don't need God. You don't need to cry to Him. But when you don't have, so you cry to Him, it awakens the natural faith of our soul, of our neshama, which is hidden deep down. So, the same thing here with you, the taxi driver. Every day you are like this, you are expecting from God, because God wants to show you that He exists, and He is the big boss. Was it clear, David? Yes or no?
Ouais, j'espère.
It's not clear?
Il faut toujours dire 2 fois, comme ça va mieux.
No, the thing is, because you think of something else sometimes when I speak. And that's the reason why it's not clear. Is it clear, Matatiao?
Yes.
And you?
C'est clair.
Okay, fine. Let's go to the next shiur. This shiur is finished.
Lama.
It's already almost 10:20. It was clear?